Fam, what's up? How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Bama Football on YouTube. Hit the thumbs up, like, subscribe. I got my boy Ty Hayes. Make sure and follow Around the Sports Table on YouTube, where you can catch him on the Bleacher Report app. We've been linking up this college football season. Ty, there's a lot of things to dive into. I know people want to talk about the transfer portal, and it is that time of season when you start to look at the transfer portal, you start to talk about recruiting. Here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the items on the left and the items on the right, big time recruits on the right. And a couple starting points for this is the transfer portal. Ty, as I turn it over to Point, make sure to hit the like and thumbs up on this video. We appreciate you guys. Let's get 300 thumbs up on this video if you think that Alabama once again will have a top 3 recruiting class in 2024, and there could be another big name joining this class, and I think you know who that is. Ty, it's always amazing to have you on, man. Wednesdays have been even more bright with your presence on the show, man.
Forward to now this meeting. It's almost therapeutic, and especially after these past weekends, we're riding on a high right now. We linked up right before the Iron Bowl. I don't think it's lost on the fans, Kyle, that right when we started linking up, you got the Milroe Miracle, you have Bama downing Georgia, and now Bama to the college football playoff. I'm just saying, we're cooking with fire over here. But let's jump right into it, man. We have got so much to talk about. We're going to kick it off with the portal and recruiting because it's Flipmas, Kyle. I know Christmas is around the corner, but before we get there, it is Flipmas. Make no mistake about it. But the transfer portal kicked off this week, and already we see 2 entrances from Alabama into the portal. You have wide receiver Tyu Jones-Bell, who I don't think is overtly surprising to those that have been paying attention. And then you have the quarterback who enters in, Tyler Buchner. Now, interesting about Tyler Buchner, before I pass it to you, Kyle, this is a guy who, pure athlete, right? Pure athlete. He comes to Alabama from Notre Dame as a quarterback and leaves to go back to Notre Dame for lacrosse. In a roundabout way, I do think it's pretty cool, right? That this is a guy that if it's not working out on the football field, at least has enough athleticism to go say, hey, I'm going to go play lacrosse. So I'm being halfway facetious when I say pure athlete, but that is kind of interesting to see. What were your thoughts on those 2 portal entrances?
I mean, when you look to Tyler Buchner, number one, we hope things that work out for him going forward. I mean, these are athletes. They're trying to do what is best for them. And I think that Tommy Rees probably, there was probably some talk with Tommy Rees being that he is from Notre Dame. He does know Tyler Buchner. Come over to Alabama and at least fight for the starting quarterback job. Now, I don't think that Tommy Rees understood how good Jalen Milroe was going to be. I don't think anybody did, right? So when he got here, clearly he had an opportunity in that South Florida game. Wasn't going to work out. He wasn't the quarterback for the job. There's no, and now he's going to go a separate way. Now, the reason that he's going to play lacrosse back at Notre Dame is because he can play immediately. He's one of the top-rated lacrosse players, and that's kind of it. When you look to the story of Tyler Buchner, sometimes things don't work out. And I've said this before. When you look to the transfer portal and you look to Alabama, Coach Saban has a really high hit rate on the transfer portal. I mean, there's several guys that you can think of inside the comment box. How about a question for you inside the comment box? Name a player from the transfer portal that has came to Alabama that has been an impact player or started for Alabama. I'll let you do that inside the comment box. So name a transfer portal player that has come here to Alabama and made a impact. All right, my boy Luke from Weaver, man. It's his birthday. 36 years old, man. Happy birthday to you, Luke, out in Weaver, Alabama. I hope you have an amazing day. December 6th, man. Are you a Scorpio, man? You Scorpios better be careful, man. But I appreciate you being here, and I hope you have an amazing year. And thank you very much for calling into the show. So when you look to, the transfer portals, people saying Burton, people saying Jamison Williams, people saying Jalen Key, people saying Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, it's going to be a big list of guys that have come to the portal from Alabama that have been able to make. Oh, it's Sagittarius. That's right. Okay, you're a Sagittarius. That's a safe space. But I think my point is the transfer portal has become a place for impact players. And we're going to talk about that on this show. Guys that could potentially be prospects for Alabama, targets that could be for Alabama. My thoughts on Tyu Jones-Bell. Look, He was removed from the roster back in August, I think. I mean, he's not on the roster in terms of right now. So, hopefully things pick up with him. And you've seen other transfers go out to programs and make an impact on other programs. I look at a Trey Sanders for TCU. I look at a JoJo Earl. Trayshawn Holden made a big catch just recently up at Oregon. So guys come in, guys go out. And right now, I think when you look to the transfer portal, it's fun to talk about guys that could come in. Landon Dickerson's a great one. Landon Dickerson is kind of like the OG of the transfer portal guys, right? Because what was crazy about him is he came from Florida State where his knees were banged up and he was injury plagued there, and they thought he could be the guy. And then when he came to Alabama from Tallahassee, they were like, oh, he's going to be okay. He's turned into one of the top offensive linemen in the country, turned into a leader, and is now balling out with the Eagles. So really amazing. Yeah. And then there's some guys that don't work out. I mean, you look at an Ajay Hall and where he's gone. You look to other guys that have just come in, a Tyler Harrell, a Tyler Buckner. So there are some misses, but I think the overall point is he has a high hit rate in terms of guys that are able to, come in and make an immediate impact. So, Ty, I think when you start to look to guys, Tyler Steen's another one, great ad. When you start to look to guys to be like rumored to be potentially headed to Bama, there's a couple guys that are starting to see a little bit of smoke. One hasn't even entered the transfer portal officially.
Yeah, and this is where the conversation gets really interesting. And Kyle, to piggyback off of something you asked of the viewers, I'm going to ask a similar question. Kyle asked you all to hop down to the comments, name a transfer that came in and impacted. Now, name your favorite transfer that came to Alabama. I was sitting here hoping nobody was going to say Landon Dickerson, and the great people out there beat me to it. Yeah. It's either him or J-Mo for me. The energy they brought to those teams, you couldn't argue. Don't forget about what they did on the football field, but for 1 second, forget that. Just the leadership they provided was electricity to the team and really provided a spark. But let's talk about some names that the fans need to know. First and foremost, you alluded to a name that hasn't entered the transfer portal just yet. We're talking about none other than wide receiver Evan Stewart, the ultimate will he, won't he game being played right now. And for those of you that remember, Evan Stewart was a guy that out of high school, a lot of people thought could be Bama bound. Terry and Arnold even said it in an interview not too long ago that he thought Evan Stewart and he would be going heads up in practices against each other at Alabama. That seemed to be the plan. He hasn't entered his name into the portal just yet, but there has been smoke that he intended to. He didn't travel with A&M to LSU, and Bama is a destination. Walter Nolan, an individual who hit the portal, and now LT Overton, also from A&M, 2 members from the defensive line. Watch Walter Nolan. I think Alabama is going to be pushing for him because of the past history. They recruited him.
Yep.
But Kyle, also the center position is a position I'm going to be watching closely for Alabama in the transfer portal, seeing if they pursue anybody there. What's your thoughts on Evan Stewart, Walter Nolan, LT Overton, and where Alabama could navigate?
Yeah, I mean, you're starting to see guys that are rotating out of Texas A&M. And if I'm at Texas A&M, I might just hang tight just for a second. They're making some interesting acquisitions to their coaching staff. Things are transforming. Texas A&M, I mean, they have enough resources to do whatever they want. Now, of course, Evan Stewart came out and said, look, the NIL money isn't all hyped up to be. Who knows? It's a fluid situation. And by the way, thanks to Case inside the comment box for the super chat. And he says, everyone's talking about FSU getting left out of the playoffs, but no one is talking about the GOAT being left out of the Heisman, and that is Will Riker, the all-time leading scorer in college football, history, which is crazy, right? He's going to have a statue posted out him of Tuscaloosa of Will Riker. So that's pretty incredible. We appreciate the super chat. I think that you bring up a great point. You look at the center position, and that's going to be a vital spot for Alabama next year. Clearly, it was for this year with Seth, and you've seen a lot of growth from him. And I still think that he is punching above his weight. He's not an overall elite type center. I'm not knocking on the kid. It's just those are facts. And he's done the best what he could do. And you've seen him come through in some big games. I mean, he's played Georgia well, a couple times for saying that, which is, a lot to say. I think that the Evan Stewart deal, he hasn't entered the transfer portal just yet. It doesn't make sense for him to come to Alabama. I know he's an elite talent and he brings so much to the table, but look at the guys that Alabama currently has on the depth chart, right? You look at 3 sophomores: Isaiah Bond, Kobe Prentice, Kendrick Law. Those guys are sophomores. You have Jermaine Burton, who's exiting out. You would think, to the NFL. You have Malik Benson coming back, and I know that Malik Benson hasn't had the year that we thought he was going to have, but he does have an opportunity to come back if it makes sense for him. So I look for a guy like that because he does have some playmaking ability. I mean, Jalen Milroe tried to put the ball to him a couple times, but I will say this: there's been a couple times, honestly, that Malik Benson has dropped a couple passes this year. If you go back and watch a couple games, I think he's dropped 2 or 3. So he's been, he hasn't had the season that we anticipated. You bring in a player like that, clearly, everybody's going to be excited and hyped up about that. But those 3 sophomores are going to be ballers next year. And then we're about to talk about him in a second. Ryan Williams is a guy that could potentially, put his name in the class of 2024. So you have him as a freshman. And then in the pre-show, you mentioned this, Jalen Hell. I mean, that guy is an absolute baller who played as a freshman. So there's a lot of guys at the wide receiver position. In terms of other guys from Texas A&M that could potentially make sense, LT Overton, his brother, I don't necessarily think, I read an article, it said they're not necessarily a package deal. And I respect that. I mean, you got to do what's best for yourself. But I'm kind of watching the offensive linemen. I'm also watching which tackles jump into the portal, specifically a right tackle, because you have Caden Proctor, who has grown. He's only a freshman, but we all know that J.C. Latham, being a first-team All-SEC guy, he's going to go to the NFL. I mean, he's a top 15 pick or whatever. So you got to look to guys not only behind him on Alabama's depth chart, but, if you're looking for an immediate need, that might be a spot that you go to. We've seen Coach Saban do it in the past with Tyler Steen. So those are kind of my thoughts when you look to,
Oh, Kyle having a bit of technical difficulties. Fear not. I can take over from here until he gets it figured out. He was going on talking about Evan Stewart, all the things that Alabama could do in the transfer portal, and I think it makes a lot of sense, the question Kyle posed.
I zoomed out, man. I hit the slide button, so I exited out, man.
It happens to the best of us. Hey, I was ready to come in here and take off running to try and to do. But I think you raised a really good question, man, about Evan Stewart. I would love nothing more for him to come to Bama. I think he is a tremendous talent. I don't even think we've seen him scratch the surface because of all the chaos out there. Bama's really loaded at wide receiver. Benson didn't have the year we expected, but do not be disenfranchised into thinking he is not an extremely talented individual. Mm-hmm. Then you talk about Ryan Williams. What about Namari Jefferson, someone who I find to be criminally underrated, even though he's a top 150 player in the nation coming in, not to speak of Jalen Hale. It could be a little bit of a loaded room, in fairness, Kyle, and that's something we've got to watch. Now, whenever we talk about who else from Bama, I think Alabama's in a position right now where we're not going to see a bunch of people hit the transfer portal until the season ends. But Kyle, there's an unfortunate reality to the transfer portal that the transfer portal giveth, but the transfer portal taketh. Yep. Do you expect to see our kind of normal exodus from Alabama? And when I say normal, you have very talented players who look at the situation and say, you know what, I could roll the dice here, or I could go try and contribute somewhere else. Or do you think we could get some surprises this year?
I think there's going to be other guys that enter the NCAA transfer portal from Alabama. I mean, that's just kind of the world that we live in. There's zero chance that we escape this season with just 2 guys that have entered the portal. Which guys are there going to be? I don't know. I mean, we could sit here and come up with guys that, it might make sense for them just based on the roster, but we don't know which guys actually, and nobody is going to know. That is going to be something that is kept internally. That is something that Saban talked about with his team on Monday. And Coach Saban said this, and it's facts. He said that the transfer portal is going to be different from the playoff teams as opposed to the teams that are playing in the bowl games. And think about that. I mean, we haven't heard transfer news out of Michigan. We haven't heard much transfer news out of Alabama, right? Just 2 guys that weren't, and one wasn't even on the roster, and one was never going to play. You look to Texas. I think they had someone from the secondary that was not a key contributor hit the portal. And then from Washington, I don't think there's been any high profile names, if anyone, to enter the transfer portal. So it's a completely different setup, the way that the teams in the playoffs are, looking at the transfer portal. But I do think that guys are going to hit the portal. And I know you guys are going to ask me, or you guys want to talk about it. And I'll tell you, I think there are going to be, probably another quarterback to hit the portal. Is it going to be, Eli Holsting or Ty Simpson? And this is just my opinion. I think there's going to be one of them. And I think that these guys are good enough to play at other places. And I think because you have Julian Sain come in, it's not the fact that these guys are scared of competition or whatever. I just think that these guys are going to hit the portal because it makes most sense for them to play immediately next year. And that's just the way it goes. I mean, when you look to the quarterbacks currently on the roster, a lot of people felt that Jalen Milroe was going to go to the NFL, or that might be a misconception. That is a misconception. He is coming back next year. I don't think he's going to the NFL. He's not a finished product. There's a lot of quarterbacks that are going out that are ready for the NFL. Jalen Milroe is going to be ready for the NFL at some point. It's not going to be after this season. His story is not finished. So, he's coming back. And then you start to look, if you're Ty Simpson and you're a redshirt freshman, do you want to sit another season? I mean, he could. I mean, in the guys who do sit at Alabama and they wait, things usually do work out for them. It only takes one season to really get things going. And then, where do you go if you're a quarterback from Alabama? I mean, is it the best to leave the SEC? And you're only one play away if you're the backup to be playing here at the University of Alabama and playing with all these weapons. So I don't know. I think it'll eventually happen. Guys leaving the transfer portal. That's the world that we live in. And that's kind of my take on that. But I don't think you're going to hear much leading up to the Rose Bowl in terms of guys exiting the transfer portal. Maybe one from Alabama, but I don't think it's going to be like a daily news thing up until we get past, the Rose Bowl national championship.
Yeah, I completely agree. If I was being forced to guess right now where we could see a transfer come from, I think the quarterback room is a real natural position to turn to. There's only one that sees the field. Yeah, injuries occur, but you also have some really talented guys coming in. So that's going to be interesting. And I think this is a perfect transition. As we talk about a room that could have another loss, we need to talk about why that room could sustain another loss. Because you're right, Ty Simpson, Eli Holstein, these guys could sit another year behind Jalen Milroe and learn. But there is a superstar coming to Tuscaloosa very soon, Kyle, who will also be sitting behind Jalen Milroe to learn. Are you going to be able to beat him out? I am talking about none other than five-star quarterback, composite five-star plus. Everywhere you look, he's going to be a five-star. Nearly everywhere you look, he's the number one quarterback in the nation, Julian Sain, coming to Alabama. Kyle, I said this was Alabama's most important recruit for this cycle. What are your thoughts on Julian Sain?
I think when you look to Julian Sain as a quarterback, I mean, he really reminds me a lot of Bryce Young. And I think someone pointed this out to me because I was watching his film, and the way that he's able to move around in the pocket, extend plays, throw on the run, throw across his body, just an elite playmaker. Somebody pointed out to me that he's actually working with the same trainer or has the same type of coaching that Bryce Young did in high school. So it makes total sense. And the guy's coming in with a lot of athleticism. I think sometimes we certainly overhype these type of freshmen, specifically the five stars. I mean, think about it. I mean, if it was to ever come down between Ty Simpson, Dylan Lonergan, and Julian Sain, I mean, look, these guys already have the system in place. They already know Tommy Rees's, philosophy under the Alabama offensive playbook. So it takes them a little bit of time. And when freshmen don't play here, it's sad when people are like, "Oh, the guy doesn't live up to his hype." No, just wait. Just hang on. Like Chris Broswell, he was a five-star. It took him a long time to get on the field here at Alabama. This is a different place to play. So you got to be patient and let these guys develop. And you might I think it was Kendrick Law who said it best. I mean, you might have the talent, but you might not know the playbook, and you might know the playbook and you might not have the talent. So things have to line up at different times. So when you have a quarterback like Julian Sain come in, this guy has so much to offer. And the quarterbacks at Alabama have continued to just excel at the highest level. You look to the past quarterbacks at Alabama, you look to the current quarterback at Alabama, and Coach Saban has really put an emphasis on the quarterback position, over the last, since we saw probably the start of like Lane Kiffin to now. Brian DeBall, Mike Locksley, Steve Sarkisian, Brian Bill O'Brien. I mean, and now under Tommy Rees, look at all the quarterbacks that we've had to work with, right? So now you have Julian Sain in the queue. And of course, these guys have to sign their official paperwork, which will be coming on December 20th. And I bet you there's people out there that are going to try to lure these prospects away with NIL money, because that does exist. And you're like, well, do they have more money than Alabama? There's programs that certainly do. Ohio State has a ton. And we're about to talk about Jordan Seaton here in a second, who's making his decision tomorrow. And I think that's something that is going to be a major factor in his deal. And of course, Ohio State has an incredible program, but Julian Sain, Tommy Rees did meet with his family and Julian Sain recently. This is a key target. This is a must get in this class. This is a leader of their class. He's been doing a great job recruiting, and you like your quarterbacks to have dynamic wide receivers to throw to. So there's one out of Saraland down in Mobile, Alabama, that I think would be a nice target for him to hook up with.
And you want to talk about not only a fantastic player, he has had the college football recruiting world chirping the last few days, because we expect an announcement here very soon, in the coming days even, about Ryan Williams. We were listening the other day, and there was someone who works in the Auburn media, saying he talked to Ryan Williams, and he said, "Oh, are you going to reclassify?" And Ryan Williams said, "I might, or I might flip." So this is a guy that knows how to play the game in terms of having people on the edge of their seat.
Yeah.
This is someone who, personally, I think this announcement, and I don't know anything, once again, purely my opinion, no inside knowledge, I think he's going to reclassify to Alabama, because my question is this, Kyle. If you're Ryan Williams, you've seen what the Tide has built. Yes, Hugh Freeze is doing something exciting at Auburn, as much as that absolutely pains me to admit. We know who Hugh Freeze is. But they don't have a Julian Sayin. They don't have a Jalen Milroe. They don't have a Holloman Wiggins.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Ryan Williams. Where do you expect this to go?
I think that Ryan Williams ends up at Alabama. Now, I wouldn't be completely surprised if somehow Yellowwood makes so Yellowwood is the guy who basically backs Auburn in their NIL deals, who is able to, offer basically whatever cash amount to these guys in NIL deals. That's why Auburn's been able to flip one guy from Georgia and one guy from Alabama already. Ryan Williams, it could be a different story. And I think that this leading up to, I think, his December 10th announcement is more towards reclassification, but who knows? I mean, it could certainly be a flip. I think getting Ryan Williams on board is super important. And specifically, if he can reclassify, this class of 2024 is going to continue to shoot up the rankings, but it's also an area of need. I mean, we were just talking about Evan Stewart. Does Alabama need him right now? Not necessarily. It would be amazing to get him, but you need these younger guys to continue to fill in the pipes. And Ryan Williams, I feel, is a day one impact player. I mean, if you watch some of his game film from Saraland, the guy, honestly, and this is crazy to say, you can't really compare him to, you can't compare many players to like Jalen Waddle, but he has that type of speed. It's crazy. Like, he is fast. That acceleration after the catch is something that you certainly need. And I think if you're Ryan Williams, you look to the quarterback, and you look to the quarterbacks that Alabama currently has, who's on the roster, and you look to the quarterbacks that Auburn has. And I think that I wouldn't be surprised if Auburn lands a big quarterback from the transfer portal, right? The Nebraska coach recently came out and said that big-time quarterbacks are costing around, $1.5 to $2 million. So if Auburn can get their quarterback situation lined up, I mean, that's what they need. Auburn needs some dynamic weapons. They need some guys to be day one impact players, and Ryan Williams would be an impact player there. Alabama, wherever he ends up, this is a vital in-state battle. This is a must-get for Nick Saban. You need to press heavy and do every single thing that you can, milk all your resources to be able to get a player like Ryan Williams. I think this is a monumental land for either Auburn or Alabama. I do think he ends up at Alabama, but who knows? I mean, things change, and I think that him reclassifying is probably also the case. So some major news coming regarding Ryan Williams. I think people would be just absolutely elated if Alabama is able to continue this momentum of riding into the Rose Bowl and then having him reclassify and him staying committed to and eventually signing on December 20th with the Alabama Crimson Tide.
And he's a guy who, I mean, you get him in early, especially like a Julian Sayin, they'll be working with this team right? Like they'll be already getting this work. That's going to be huge. And before we go to Jordan Seaton, I will say this one last thing about Williams. I think he's so gifted, Kyle,
Yeah.
that if he is to reclassify, he's going to be a top 17 player in the nation still and a 5-star. Book it. You heard it here first. That's how much stock I put into him. You want to know why? They were talking that he could push for the #1 player in 2025. That's how gifted he is.
Yep. 100%.
He's different.
Yep.
Let's talk about someone else who's different. Jordan Seaton. Now, this is one I wanted bad, Kyle.
Yeah.
Bama has a real healthy pipeline to IMG, and even healthier pipeline to the IMG offensive line. At one point, Jordan Seaton looked like an Alabama favorite, but he's coming off of a visit to Ohio State. And after that visit, it comes out that he's going to be committing real early tomorrow. In fact, I have no knowledge, but just reading the tea leaves, coming off of a visit to Ohio State, we know what type of program Ohio State is. This is one of the big boy recruiting programs, right? You see Ohio State, you see Bama, you see Georgia. Pull up your britches. You're in a battle. I think all signs are pointing Ohio State. Could Bama pull off a miracle here, Kyle?
I don't know. It doesn't seem like it. I think, this would be another tremendous slam dunk for Alabama in terms of you get your 5-star quarterback. This is the dream setup, and could things happen for Nick Saban though? They just do, because you want to play for the GOAT. His teams can get you to the playoffs, to the national title. He can specifically get you to the NFL. Like when you go into Alabama's room, and that's one of the things that I'm thinking. If I'm a 5-star guy, can I go anywhere? Absolutely. But where can I go that I can practice against a Dallas Turner every single day? Where can I go to practice against the Chris Broswell every single day? And that's Alabama. There's a handful of programs across this country that you can get that sort of play against the best every day. Alabama might be the place where you do that every single day. You've heard it before. The practices are harder than the games. That makes sense. These guys are, going heavy on, light on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever it is during the season. But look, Jordan Seaton comes to Alabama. He probably plays right away. And if I'm the coaching staff and I'm making a late pitch to Jordan Seaton, I'm like, look at our offensive line setup, Jordan. All right, you come over here. J.C. Latham is exiting out. You feel comfortable playing the right tackle, coming inside in at right tackle. We got a freshman on the opposite side of you and Caden Proctor. Right next to you, we got a redshirt sophomore by the name of Jaden Roberts that is going to help you, in terms of where you want to go. You have the offensive line certainly needs someone like Seaton. I don't know if they can make a late pitch. I guess, that it could come down to some sort of NIL deal that these guys are getting on the back end. And Ohio State is making a real push for him. And I get it. So if they lose out on him, I don't, it is going to be a blow. It's not, the end all. There's some other offensive tackles that Alabama is working with, and there's some other Alabama linemen that Wolford has on the staff or on the roster that are monsters, like guys that we haven't seen play yet. Like I was looking at Wilcom Formby the other day down at the SEC title game, or Ola Celine. These guys are towers. But a guy like Seaton, he's certainly a 5-star and would be a great addition to Julian Sain and potentially even Ryan Williams. Just add on those 5 stars, and Jordan Seaton is certainly the truth 100%.
100%. And if I'm Alabama, I let Tyler Booker and J.C. Latham do the talking for me. You want to talk about two of the most productive offensive linemen in the nation, IMG brethren right there, showing you, hey, you can do it all coming to Alabama, but that's a battle we're going to have to watch. Let's get into a lock. Caleb Odom. And Case asked earlier, how is Julian Sayin not a lock? The only reason we don't have Julian Sayin as a lock case is because Julian Sayin has not come out and explicitly stated my recruitment is over. But his actions have stated it's over. Yes. We're just going after who has physically said it.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of build on that. The next guys that we're going to talk about physically came out and said, like, I'm sure. Now, has Julian Sain said that? He might have said that in some other context, but I'm kind of going off the latest 5 days. And it was Beeman and Odom that literally said, I've completely shut down every single thing. So once he does that, I'll put the lock up. But that's just kind of the graphic talks. But everything, that you're hearing is Julian Sain is certainly committed to Alabama. But Ty, I know we're going to talk about Caleb Odom.
Yeah, and Kyle, I'm real excited about this one, especially with Reese. Now, whenever Bill O'Brien was the offensive coordinator, there were a lot of things that disappointed me. The chief thing that disappointed me is that this was a guy in Bill O'Brien known for not only his option routes, but also his use of 12 personnel in the NFL. He didn't use any 12 personnel.
No.
And I look at Alabama's tight end room and I'm like, I think this is a hidden gem, not just for Alabama, but for all of college football. Danny Lewis, Niblack, Dipri. I mean, there's a different level of athlete. All the things you can do with him makes him a really dangerous guy. Caleb Odom, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit of a different cat. This is kind of that same tight end as an Amari Niblack, someone who, if you watch him, he's split out wide.
Yes.
Kyle, talk to me about what a dangerous weapon this is.
Look, I've been a big fan of Amari Niblack for a long time. Go back and watch videos that I cut 2 years ago about Amari Niblack, and I don't think we've even seen like his best. I think that's coming along with Milroe. Like this is coming, and he's going to be that tight end as he continues to grow as a player. If they feed him enough, he will be that guy. Okay, look, I think Caleb Odom, what he has, his physical stature, everything that he brings to the table, I honestly feel that Caleb Odom, at 6'4", 220 pounds, I feel, I'm gonna go out there, I bet he could be a better player than Niblack. I feel that he could be a more dynamic, which is crazy, but Alabama has needed to bolster their tight end room. In the past, they've just kind of had these serviceable tight ends. One wasn't even like Cam Latu, he wasn't supposed to be a tight end. He came over here as an outside linebacker. He was serviceable. I think CJ Dupree, serviceable. I think the past couple guys, when's the last time that Alabama really had a dynamic tight end like even Amari Niblack? It's been a while, right? Like, was it Irv Smith, I guess?
Billingsley had all the ability.
Oh my God, Billy! Jeez, man, you're right. And
they put him to return kicks, Kyle. When have you ever seen a tight end return kickoffs?
Yeah, let me ask the comment box, Alabama fans, regarding a tight end. Who was the last truly dynamic tight end that you could split out, that you had playmaking ability? Who was it? In the last several years, who was it? And you're right, Ty. Billingsley was that guy that we were saying the same. I was like, Billingsley's Billingsley just, I don't think he just, I don't know what happened with Billingsley, man, because that was one of the things that he just didn't come with it, and it just didn't work out. And I don't even know where he's at right now. But man, Derek, what's up? I see you in the comment box. You're saying OJ Howard, the real dynasty, is saying Irv Smith. I think, yeah, Irv Smith, OJ Howard, but you need a guy that can, take over a game at the tight end position. And why do I say that? Look what George has been able to do with Brock Bowers. So there's tight ends that exist in that space. They're rare, but I think some of the catches that I saw Odom make this year, on his tape, one-handed grabs, a big imposing type tight end. I'm like him saying that he's 100% locked in, coming in with Julian Sain at the quarterback spot. That is monumental news. Absolutely 100%.
And especially with Reese and his use of 12 personnel, ladies and gentlemen, Bama has been able to really be a thorn in the side of defenses, because how do you guard a Dipri and Niblack at the same time? You basically are in 12 personnel, but you're really not in 12 personnel. You're in a quasi 11 personnel because of Niblack's fluidity. Mm-hmm. That is awful for defensive coordinators to try and navigate. And I will say this, Niblack is still very young in his development. You put him and a Caleb Odom together, someone who's been more of a dedicated tight end. Oh, it's going to be a lot of fun. Let's get to another name I cannot wait to talk about. Jeremiah Beeman, the defensive lineman, another guy who personally, Kyle, I don't want to sound like a homer, I think he's a little underrated. Talk to us about Beeman.
Okay. Once you get off this video, go watch his highlight tape.
I'm just saying.
You are going, because that's the first thing that I did. As soon as they got Beeman, he's 6'4", 250 pounds, out of the Birmingham area. And I was like, okay, yeah, Beeman, in-state guy, big pickup for Coach Saban. And then I went and watched his tape, and I was like, I guess tape or film on Huddle. Yo, this dude is underrated, and he has a high motor, super aggressive, big open field tackler. This is and just like Odom did yesterday, I think it came out in similar times. He said completely shutting it down, coming on in. So when you look to guys that are filling that defensive line spot, you got to be really excited about him. And I think that getting him as kind of that sleeper in-state guy. I'm super, super pumped about him. And it's important. Look, Coach Saban, one thing that I've come to know, and I think you guys have all known this, since Coach Saban has been here, and I didn't really know this either, the state of Alabama has so many elite football players. The high school football here is outstanding, 100%. And there's so many guys that Saban takes care of his backyard, 100, like a million percent. And he has great relationships with the high school football coaches here. And right now he's on the grind. He's going all around. I mean, Jalen Mbakwe, that was another guy that he recently met with, and we don't have him up on the board. These are just some of the guys that we're talking about, but another 5-star, probably the best overall athlete in the state of Alabama, probably similar to like a Kool-Aid, if you will. So getting those guys on board as well is and taking care of your own backyard. Saban's always done that. That's why that Ryan Williams winning those in-state battles. And there's a couple other guys. Who's the guy that flipped from Alabama to Auburn?
Perry Thompson.
No, there's another one too. Is there DeMarcus Riddick?
Well, he flipped from Georgia to Auburn, but everybody thought he was going to flip from Georgia to Bama.
But he's from Alabama, is my point, right? So it's like those in-state battles are crucial to win. And Coach Saban, for the most part, always gets the top guys out of the state of Alabama. So Jalen Mbakwe and Jeremiah Beeman, you got to be certainly excited about him. And then if they can close on Ryan Williams, that would be absolutely monstrous in terms of the recruiting for the in-state class of 2024 if it works out for Williams from the state of Alabama.
One thing I always talk about whenever it comes to recruiting, you're not going to win all of the battles in your state. Recruiting has become far too national now. You have to win the battles you can't afford to lose, and Saban has been sensational at locking down the battles Alabama had to win. Let's talk about this next name from my neck of the woods, Casey Poe. Yeah. Number one interior offensive lineman in the nation. And when you turn on the film, it shows. Kyle, I have had the luxury of watching this guy play live. What you see in those little clips does not do justice to the havoc he wreaks on this offensive line. Alabama got a great one, ladies and gentlemen. He's going to be able to come in, learn from Booker, learn from Roberts. Talk to me about your expectations and excitement for Casey Poe.
Casey Poe is a guy, honestly, I have to learn more about. And I've watched this film. As soon as they commit to Alabama, I go through and I do watch their film, and I kind of, look to what I like about these specific players. When it comes to interior linemen, offensive linemen, I think it's really important that you bolster up that area. I think this is one of the areas that if you're looking at, a center or a guard position, I mean, it is physical in the SEC. And the games are won in the trenches. You look to guys like, I'm sure you guys follow Cole Kublik, right? And he's one of the great offensive line gurus that really talks about the offensive line. You have to be physical. You have to be dirty. You have to be a dog to play, in the SEC and at Alabama. I mean, you look at the guards right now. You got Roberts and you got Booker. Like those guys don't play, and you have Seth as the centerpiece right there. So look, Casey Poe, need to watch more on him. I know he's from the Lone Star State, and I will say this about their relationship with Texas. It's really important. Coach Saban is in Texas, these next couple days, visiting with a couple different guys, also a running back that we're going to talk about here in just a second. The state of Texas has been really good to Coach Saban. You look to where Jalen Milroe's from, right? Katie, we talked about that before. We talked about several guys from the state of Texas. I'm sure you can name a few, Ty, that are from Texas that have come to Alabama. It's so important. I think overall, Florida's known as a speed state, and there's so many prospects that Coach Saban's been able to continue to get out of their relationship with the IMG. But the state of Texas and the Coach Association working with Coach Saban has been monumental. And, Casey Poe is a really good addition, a 4-star. Anytime you get a 4-star, it says good things. But there's been a couple guys from the state of Texas that have come over to Alabama, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. You look at kind of the Brockemeyer brothers and kind of the story about that. It would be nice just to almost have like a documentary about the Brockemeyer brothers. And you still have James, who's here, on campus, on the roster. And I think he's like the second or the third center on this team. So he's still here. And then you have Tommy Brockemeyer, who went to TCU. So Lone Star State always coming with it. And I still think about this. What an opportunity if Alabama – this works out well for Alabama in the playoffs, okay? Because you start to showcase your program to California. I mean, think about it, right? You're going out to the Rose Bowl. There's a lot of guys out on the West Coast. They might not be able to come and see Alabama. So in terms of the Rose Bowl and the visibility that you get in a game of that magnitude, it's great for recruiting out West. I mean, Los Angeles is another area that has so many high school prospects. And then you come back and you get to showcase your program on a national stage against, in Houston. Like the Mecca. I mean, you know how many prospects are out there, right? Between the DFW area, the Metroplex, and then you have Houston, absolute monsters in terms of recruiting. So love the addition. There you go. Jace McClellan's a great one. A lot of different guys. Kendrick Blackshire. Kendrick Blackshire. Great names. Let me ask you guys inside the comment box but we're going to talk about a running back who's also from the state of Texas. But who is your favorite prospect from the state of Texas to come to Alabama? So favorite Texas prospect. Ty, that's for you too, okay? To come from I know. You could say there's a million of them. How about your top two? Okay. Top two from Texas to Bama. Let's talk about this running back who's also from the Lone Star State.
So I'm gonna give you my top three, right? Because at number one, Jalen Hurts, Jalen Milroe. I mean,
look at that, boom.
Unbelievable. Yeah, Jarvis beat me to it. But I'm going to tell you, Waddle's a great one, CJM Waddle's. But for me, what about Tony Brown, ladies and gentlemen? Tony Brown at Alabama. I'll never forget him walking through the LSU warm-ups, jawing at them, and that guy was a straight menace, man. He stands out to me. I loved Tony Brown. There are too many to count. I'll tell you something else before we talk about Lacey, Kyle. You want to talk about a fun show on turf to watch? Whenever JoJo Earl and Jace McClellan both played at Aledo at the same time, what they did to opposing defenses was criminal. I almost called CPS multiple times because I was like, that's a child of God out there that y'all are just running the score up on. It was unbelievable. This next running back, very much well in the same mold. Kawan Lacey, Lancaster High School, and a little bit of a hidden gem, ladies and gentlemen. Through much of the recruiting process, pretty much, a non-factor, but now teams are starting to take note. He's one of those guys that once one team really put their eye on him, it was over. He went from a low-ranking 3-star. Now he's a top 300 guy in most of these services. We're talking about a running back, Kyle, that stands over 6 foot. He stands 6 foot, 205, and has tabbed multiple sub-11 second 100-meter dashes. This is a big speed back. Talk to me about Lacey and the impact he could have.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, when you look to Alabama's running back, I always like to go and look at the depth chart of where Alabama has running backs. And you see that you have Jace and you have Roydell potentially leaving the program. And I say potentially because guys who are seniors on this squad still have that COVID year. So we don't know which guys are going to exit until the actual season is done. I would think that those guys do exit the program. So now you're looking at Jam Miller, who is an absolute monster. You have Justice Haynes, absolute monster, and you have Richard Young, right? So you need another guy that can come on, and I like the backs that Alabama currently has and how they're able to, they're balanced backs. I would consider these backs, right? I don't think that there's a real scat back on this team. A scat back to me was like a Killen Robinson, right? Who, by the way, left from Alabama to the state of Texas to go play for the Longhorns. He's kind of like a scat back. I thought that he was like quick, fast. These guys that Alabama have, they all have a balanced approach with power. So, when you look to a player like Lacey, he does have those attributes as well. And I think you hit a great point, Ty, is sometimes these running backs, because there's so many running backs in the country, some of them get slept on. I mean, think about this one. You know who got slept on? Josh Jacobs.
100%.
He was from the state of Texas, Oklahoma, and nobody knew about him. Coach Saban and his staff were able to see him, give him an opportunity, and my goodness, did he have a career, right? He came and he did such a great job here at Alabama and then in the NFL for sure. So, I like the Lacey addition. If they're able to grab him, you clearly need a running back in this class. I think there's some other guys that they're probably looking at, but right now, Coach Saban being in the Lone Star State can get to Casey Poe, see Lacey, and hopefully lock up a very talented running back, a guy who certainly seems underrated. And look, the running backs, there's so many, and you got to come here and you got to, play at the ultimate level and and when you come here as a running back, I think the two positions right now where Alabama's just absolutely loaded quarterback and running back. If you come here as a running back, you got to wait. You got to be patient. Just think about how talented Justice Haynes is. Are you telling me that Justice Haynes can't play right now and run for 100 yards in the Rose Bowl, right? He could. You got to wait. You got to be patient. And you got to wait your turn. Same thing with Richard Young. I mean, you have some really talented running backs on this squad right now. Alabama's super loaded at that running back spot with these 3 running backs. One is a sophomore and 2 are freshmen, but really excited about potentially Lacey as well as a 4-star.
Yeah, the Alabama running back room is absolutely smacked how loaded it is. I will give you one more room, though. I think it has an argument to be the most loaded room in all of college football. That's that outside linebacker room at Alabama. You're talking Dallas Turner, 5-star edge, Chris Braswell, 5-star edge, Keon Keeley, number 2 player in the nation, 5-star edge, Yonze Pierre, 5-star edge, Keanu Coate, nearly a 5-star, came in at number 49 in the nation, top 100 player, Quandarius Robinson, number 34 in the nation, 2 outside of 5-star status. Then you're talking about Jeremiah Alexander, who came to Alabama as the number 1 edge in the nation, 5-star, has since moved to inside linebacker. Jahad Campbell came to Alabama as the number 2 edge in the nation, 5-star, has since moved to inside linebacker. And I'm just talking the 5-stars. That's how loaded that room is. It's stupid. You want to know another room where it's stupid how loaded Alabama is? Defensive back, but that is not a factor in the slightest for Dre Kirkpatrick Jr. And this one gets me all in the warm and fuzzies, Kyle. It just feels right? It's having the legacy come back. I'm so happy about this one. Talk to us about Kirkpatrick Jr.
Yeah, the thing about Dre Kirkpatrick Jr., I mean, I think the first thing that there are 2 things that you see. Number one, you're like, what? Dre Kirkpatrick has a son who's committed to Alabama. You're like, wait, how old am I? What year is this? Because look, we're all getting older, thankfully. We're all still here, thankfully. And now you have Dre Kirkpatrick, a legacy. Think about it. Think about it from Coach Saban's perspective, right? It's like, he's like, okay, you were an absolute baller, what you did here, and now here comes your son. He's completely different from his pops in terms of his playing style. I've seen, and the second thing is you probably look at the 3-star. Okay, don't get it twisted. I mean, 3 stars, whatever. I mean, coaches have their own ranking systems for everybody else. The thing that I noticed on Dre Kirkpatrick's film is the dude can absolutely lay the wood. Think of, remember how big of a hitter DeMarco Hellams was? DeMarco Hellams had an absolute boom, and the guy could absolutely blow up anybody, running backs, wide receivers coming across the middle. And I think that Dre Kirkpatrick has that. And when you look to Alabama's current secondary, and you look to the safeties, all the safeties have been able to deliver the boom. And you need one of those guys to come in. I like the story yesterday. They welcomed Coach Saban into their home, and they have they gave him like an ornament or what was it? And it said like world's best coach. It was something that, went viral on social media. So I love the addition. And the great thing about it was his commitment. Remember when he trolled everyone with his commitment, and then he flipped and he was like, going to Bama. So that was one of the all-time greatest trolls that I've seen in terms of the announcing where you're going to go. And his pops even had to walk off, remember? And his dad was so stressed. And what a moment for dad and son. To have that sort of legacy connection and to have your blood go where you went and where you balled out, where you had so many memories and where you eventually left to go play in the NFL. So Dre Kirkpatrick Jr., love the story about it. Coach Saban clearly really happy about getting that legacy addition, and the secondary is bolstered because of it. I wouldn't think too much of the 3-star. I think when you get to Alabama, all those stars are erased, and you got to start from the bottom to get onto the field, because there's been some 5-stars that haven't been able to get on the field right away. So I think it just kind of takes time. So Dre Kirkpatrick Jr., happy to see it, and really fired up about this recruiting class. And of course, signing day will be on December 20th, and we will hear from Coach Saban on that day. And we'll, of course, any type of breaking news that comes our way in terms of the recruiting front, we will bring that to you in terms of breaking commits, flips, transfer portal additions, subtractions, whatever it is. We'll bring that right here on Bama Football on YouTube. Ty, as we kind of switch gears from the transfer portal and recruiting, there's some stuff going on about the college football litigation. DeSantis is actually in Tuscaloosa tonight for the Republican debate. I work out. I'm in a workout group. You guys all know this. At 5 in the morning, and we rode through campus. We not rode. We ran through campus, and everything was set up. The stage was set, and he'll be here tonight. He's trying to raise $1 million for some sort of litigation into the college football playoff committee. We know that the playoff format is designed. I mean, what is your thought? I mean, there's the only thing that I'm hoping here is that they don't try to like slow down the playoffs. I don't think that's going to happen. If they want to go after the committee, go ahead, because that thing was failed to begin with. I mean, Brian Kelly had a really great interview yesterday that I'm going to upload as a YouTube short saying, look, there's 5 conferences, Power 5, and there's 4 spots. Do the math. What's your take on all this stuff that is kind of going down on that front?
Listen, I am actually blown away that people at that level genuinely think they have a case. And the reason why I'm so blown away, Kyle, if I could, to quote, the College Football Playoff Selection Committee has codified into the parameters what they look like when they're what they look for, when they're looking for the top 4 teams.
Yeah.
And it states, and I quote, the selection committee will select the teams using a process that distinguishes amongst otherwise comparable teams by considering the following factors.
Mm-hmm.
Conference championships won, strength of schedule, head-to-head competition, comparative outcomes of common opponents, and most importantly, other relevant factors such as unavailability of key players and coaches that may have affected a team's performance during the season or will likely affect its postseason performance. So we can get all on our high horse and start clutching at pearls, but we also have to understand this was codified since 2013. And if anybody says, Kyle, this has never happened before, they're breaking precedent, that's not true. This happened in 2014, where this committee looked at that very parameter and stated, can we put Ohio State into the college football playoffs with their starting quarterback going down? Do you want to know the difference between Ohio State and Florida State? Ohio State was undeniable whenever their quarterback went down. They still had Zeke run for over 220 yards against Wisconsin. They beat Wisconsin in their conference championship 59-0, and Cardell Jones didn't miss a beat. The Florida State offense looked like they were having a really hard time moving the ball. I feel for Florida State players. I feel for Florida State fans. This is an uncomfortable situation and does present some of the problems that we've inherently had with the 4-team system. But trying to win a lawsuit about this, I just don't understand where standing you're going to have. Kyle, at the point where the committee says we're not after the 4 most deserving, we're after the 4 best, that's subjective. Now you're trying to litigate people's opinions. I don't understand how smart people can do dumb things sometimes, and this is really stupid.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, the simple case. I mean, I think that the whole thing has been handled poorly. It was a system designed to fail. I didn't like Mike Norvell's kind of approach about it. I think that he could have been like, look, we have an opportunity to play Georgia. It's not a bad consolation prize at all. The 2-time defending champ. Keep your team together. And I thought the statement that's really bothering me is he's like, then why even play the games? Don't say that when you're leading men. Don't say that. Because these games do matter, and keep your team together during the transfer portal. Because if I'm a player on Florida State and I hear that from my coach, I'm like, well, why should I even play against Georgia? Right? You hear Kirby Smart. I mean, he could have complained more than anybody. Kirby could have, right? They lost to a team that lost a game, and they lost by 3 points. That was it. We all know at the end of the day that Georgia is a better football team than Washington. They had a much better case than Florida State did. They should have done was Georgia should have got rid of Bowling Green, and Florida State should have got rid of North Alabama, and they should have played each other during the season and made a better case for it, right? So at the end of the day, things don't go your way all the time. Even when you're perfect, sometimes you're not perfect. But here's a chance for adversity. And Nick Saban last year, I mean, you revert back to when Ohio State didn't make it. How about Coach Saban last year? They missed by 4 points, right? That was it. And Saban still had his team focus on the Sugar Bowl against Kansas State, played their best game, and he also got Bryce Young to play in the game and William Anderson. I don't think he asked those guys. I think they wanted to because, they saw, the value in playing in the Sugar Bowl. That's why some of these guys that don't play in the bowl games, I know Caleb Williams, they do what's best for themselves, but that kind of takes the air out of it. And Coach Saban has said this a lot of times: when you have the playoffs, it devalues the bowl games 100%. It 100% does. That's why you're seeing like the transfer portals and stuff like that from the guys that aren't in the playoffs. What are your thoughts, Ty, on the Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl? Give me kind of an at a glance, because at Jawan from Arkansas, who's a frequent caller on my show, he feels that Washington is going to give it to Texas. I think that Texas is going to beat up on Washington, and then the Rose Bowl. I think Michigan is a favorite early on against Alabama out in the Rose Bowl. Alabama continues to be the underdog, at least on paper. What are your thoughts on the college football playoffs? Just kind of an overview on the two games.
We got really fun matchups. Mike Ford, a Michigan fan, is in here. Glad you're in here, Mike. Really looking forward to our game. He says the ACC was 6-4 against the SEC. Important to note that 4 of those wins, right? LSU is a good win. Florida State got that. You're talking about South Carolina being beaten twice. South Carolina had no semblance of an offensive line. In fact, if you really looked hard, you could have seen me out there blocking for Spencer Rattler. And yes, I got him halfway killed. You're also talking about Vandy. I think if we want to talk about a relevant game, a middle of the pack Tennessee or Kentucky team ran Louisville out the building, and Louisville and Florida State were at a mid-off in that game. So a nuanced look into that conversation really changes the outlook. And he says they barely beat Auburn. Michigan barely beat Maryland. It's kind of funny how the performance dipped whenever that sign stealing scandal came out. And all of a sudden, you're not really beating teams up anymore, especially a Maryland that's been all over the place. Neither here nor there, and they don't have a Hugh Freeze. I like Mike Locksley. I don't have a Hugh Freeze. Let's talk about the Rose Bowl first and foremost. I think we're going to see Alabama employ a very similar strategy to what they rolled out in the very first possession against Georgia. Georgia was able to score quickly. The difference is Carson Beck has thrown for a whole bunch of yards this year. J.J. McCarthy's a very good quarterback, very seasoned, very smart. That offensive line for Michigan by Sharon Moore, who, by the way, probably the best offensive line coach in the nation. He easily has an argument at it. I think they're going to see a safety drop down into the box and dare Michigan to beat you over the top.
Yep.
If they can't beat Alabama by throwing the football and their plan is to run the football all the time, Georgia, who has got a very good offensive line, Carson Beck hadn't been sacked almost any. Arguably, people have been debating, is it Georgia or Michigan who has the best offensive line? Georgia had 70 yards on the ground. Now, I like Corum. I like Edwards. But you're going to have to keep this Alabama secondary honest. Now, looking at the other game, the Sugar Bowl, here's what's interesting about this, Kyle. We have an amazing matchup. Mm-hmm. Washington has got to stop the interior of Texas's defense, which is going to be incredibly problematic for the Huskies, but so too is it going to be problematic for Texas to try and stop the passing attack for Washington. If there's one area you can attack Texas, you got to test them vertically. They're a little bit like a Kirby Smart or Nick Saban defense where they're great against the run, but you have got to keep them honest. I think Texas is a bit more susceptible to the pass than is an Alabama, than is a Georgia. But that being said, they've switched out into some of their younger guys, a Manny Muhammad, who is playing at a high level. Bama wanted him. Their young guys are really performing. That's going to be an amazing game.
When I look to the Rose Bowl, I know we're going to talk, many different ways about the Rose Bowl, throughout the next couple of weeks leading up to the game. I do have to say this, and I want you guys to go back when you guys are doing your Michigan film study, go back and watch the Michigan-Ohio State game. What stood out to me in that particular game is how physical their defensive secondary was. 100%. I mean, those guys were a lot better than I thought. And then when you start to look statistically at what they've done in the season, I get it. Like, I don't think that they've played an overall strong schedule. I mean, they just haven't. Look at their front, 7-8 games. They really didn't play, start playing difficult games up until that Penn State game, which was back in November, right? So, but overall, I will give their secondary. I mean, they're hard hitting. They were all over the place, very physical and fast. So I think those matchups are going to be great going up against Alabama. Alabama's faced some, good secondary this year, specifically against Georgia. My goodness, that secondary was fantastic. So I do like that. The X factor, as we know, will be Jalen Milroe. And I think we do have a Michigan, Mike Forts in the comment box. He's our lone Michigan fan today. Appreciate you joining us, man. And thanks for chatting up and, with the comment box. Absolutely. They have not faced a quarterback with that has this ability that Jalen Milroe has, right? Few do. So I think he's clearly going to be the X factor. We do know that. And it comes down to, technical things. I mean, you look at it like when we get to this area of the college football world, comes down to the simple things, penalties, comes down to fumbles, comes down to interceptions, comes down to, missed field goals, things like that. And that's why Alabama is sitting at this table, because they've been able to play mistake-free football. That's the thing about Jalen Milroe. We talked a lot about this yesterday. He refuses to make a bad mistake, and he would rather take a sack than force an interception. And I think we've seen that transition of his game, and I really like that aspect. When I look to the Sugar Bowl, call me crazy, but I just think Texas does whatever they want to do against Washington. I'm not afraid to say it. I think that Washington just hasn't played, the schedule overall. And I think that the fact that they have the number 91 defense, that tells me every single thing I need to know. Hey, Jarvis, if you're still in the comment box, what is, or Ty, maybe you know this, what is the line for Washington and Texas?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Jarvis, do you know? I think, and give me an updated line too, Jarvis, if you're inside the comment box on Bama and in Michigan. I think Michigan, the last time it was like 2.5 or something like that. And I think the over, so that when I say over, the total score, that's how many points will be in that game, like what Vegas anticipates it to be. And I think it was 45 between Alabama and Michigan, which seems a little bit low, but considering that Michigan does have the number 1 defense in the country, I don't know. All right, Kyle Witherspoon, what's up? I see you inside the comment box. He's saying Texas by 4, but is that the actual are those the odds? And then let's see, Mike.
Yeah, point spread 4 right now.
Okay, so thank you, Kyle, inside the comment box. And then Mike Fort is saying 1.5 Texas. So, man, those are some close games that they're anticipating. I mean, I can't wait for that. And I think those lines will probably change as we get closer to the game, depending on, what kind of storylines, kind of creep up. But the thing I will say about Alabama, and Mike, you can take this back to your crew as well. And I think we need a Michigan injury report as well. But Alabama's so healthy. I know Jace missed his last game. Kool-Aid went out with a concussion, and he will be back. But other than that, man, this is the healthiest team that I've covered since I've been here. Right? Like, all these guys are healthy. Which is great for Alabama's sake. My goodness. I mean, all these guys, and the guys that have dealt with injuries, they've mostly been like ankles. I know Devontae Smith had, a foot that took him a long time to get back. Emmanuel Henderson, I saw him back. He had a hip. But other than that, I mean, all these guys are certainly healthy. Really, really amazing. All right, Ty, as we kind of close up here, the first team all SEC came out yesterday, and in the summertime, it was just J.C. Latham that was representing the offense. Yesterday, when it came out, Tyler Booker was added to that. So you have 2 offensive linemen who make the first team all SEC, and then you have, I believe, the Kool-Aid made. Was it Kool-Aid and Terran Arnold that made first team along with Dallas Turner? I guess I'll have to check on that.
Yep.
Right, because that would be a travesty if Terran Arnold did not make it, because the way that he played was outstanding. So you're looking at kind of Alabama's defense and built on Kevin Still. What is your take on just kind of how these players emerged throughout the season? Hit on the offensive line and the defensive line, Ty, as we close up.
Well, listen, I'll do that, but I got to hit on one room in particular. The DB room, you look at first team all SEC, the list is Alabama's Kool-Aid McKinstry, Georgia's Malachi Starks, Chris Abrams from Missouri, then you got Caleb Downs and Terrian Arnold. 3 from Alabama's secondary made first team, and that's going to be good. Talking about the offensive line, you have J.C. Latham on there, but this offensive line has grown so much. I really don't think that an all SEC label is an adequate measuring stick for where this offensive line was relative to how far they have came. When you look at Tyler Booker, when you look at Jaden Roberts, when you look at J.C. Latham, and even Caden Proctor, unbelievable work. When we look at the defensive line, what about Justin Aboigbe, Kyle?
Oh, geez. He has had, I think he's now played over 50 games at Alabama. And so last season, he only played in 4 games because he was injured. So this year, he has been this stoic leader. That's a grown man. And when he comes into the media room when we have these media opportunities with him, it's great to hear how humble he is. I mean, he's been asked, what's your thoughts on the NFL? He's like, honestly, all I'm thinking about is the install for Kentucky, the install for this or that. And I mean, he certainly played high level football. Same thing with Tim Keenan. That guy has just been outstanding from the Birmingham area as well. He's a guy that has really increased, in my opinion. And certainly, I thank you for bringing up Justin Ebogbe, because that guy has been an absolute baller. Deontay Lawson, he's killed it. Jaha Campbell, Trez Marshall had a big game last week. So this defense overall has just really stood up. Jalen Key, he's done a great job coming in from UAB. You have Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs, man, like over 100 tackles as a true freshman. Could be probably the freshman of the year. To think to come into Alabama as a freshman with all the hype, being a 5-star. No, he was it. Did you see that Kirby Smart after the game, after the SEC title, found Caleb Downs and gave him dap? Like, that's respect. 100%. And even before the game, he was like, oh yeah, I watched him play 107-on-7 games, throughout his high school career. And he's the absolute man. Caleb Downs. Oh my goodness, man, that guy. And it's hard because when you talk about Caleb Downs, people are like, oh, there's Minka and all the other great safeties that have played at Alabama. 100%. I think Caleb is the best freshman that has ever played here on the defensive side, under Nick Saban at that position.
I think that he was absolutely snubbed from the Thorpe. I want to read you these stats. He's got 64 solo tackles, 1 forced fumble. He's got 2 interceptions, 3 passes defended. If we look at his body of work, he's got 99 tackles on the season.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
That's crazy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And to be able to play and look, and he grew up fast. He grew up in that Texas game. He had to. He's faced Ole Miss. He's faced Texas. He faced the Texas A&M wide receivers. He faced the Tennessee wide receivers who were elite. LSU, all those guys. He was beat a couple times over the top, 100%. But the thing about Saban talked about him. He said that the thing that I like most about Caleb Downs, he has a next play mentality. He doesn't dwell on if there was a mistake or if something, happening. He has that next play mentality, and he's mature. And then to add on to this, Ty, guess what? He came in for Kool-Aid and replaced him at punt returner. And his very first punt at the University of Alabama, he took it to the house.
Yeah. He has got so much ability. And just speaking of the secondary, Caleb Downs is going to be a name. One thing that I'm excited about, Kyle, before we get out of here, the emergence of Trey Amos, especially as the season goes down, the flexibility that gives Bama's secondary to have a guy that would start anywhere else, come in when Kool-Aid went down and instantly lock down Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
I mean, went heads up, locked him down. Yeah. Really, really exciting stuff there.
Yeah. And then we'll end on this right here. The SEC championship. And thank you very much, Jarvis, for your support in terms of getting us the odds. And then with this certain super chat right here, but the SEC championship peaked 22 million viewers, average 17 million viewers, most watched college game of the season. Texas and Oklahoma 63. I guess that's the what is your take, Ty, from the overall viewers of the SEC? I said this before. Look, I felt that was the true national championship game, and people probably get pissed off at me saying that, but those are like the SEC is different. There's so much interest in, and the thing about Alabama is you either love them or you hate them, and they're just like I think even AJ who called and had a he did apologize yesterday about Jalen Milroe. There's a reason that like people hate the Yankees. People hate, teams that continue to win. Alabama's up there, but those numbers are absolutely crazy.
Yeah, they're absolutely insane. And someone asked, who was it? They asked how many rushing yards. Alex asked how many rushing yards Georgia had versus Alabama. Georgia had 78 rushing yards on Alabama, averaging 2.5 per. The Alabama defense is not the Alabama defense you saw earlier into the season. And yeah, they've completely evolved. I understand everybody's going to say Auburn ran for over 200 yards on Georgia's defense. Like, have y'all never watched Hugh Freeze film before? Like, that's what Hugh Freeze does.
Man, yeah. Yeah. And their quarterback didn't throw for over 100 yards against Bama. So yeah, to be able to hold to be able to hold Georgia to under 100 yards. Wow, that's crazy. Ty, man, I appreciate you. Thank you so much, man. You do such a great job. Be sure and follow Ty. If you're new to Ty, he runs Around the Sports Table a YouTube channel where he talks all things college football. And then, of course, you can find him on the Bleacher Report app. So you can find me there as well. Bleacher Report has been really cool with us, kind of linking us up together. So download the Bleacher Report app and find Ty's great work there on Bleacher Report, the app, and we'll be, coming to you, I'm sure, during December. But follow Around the Sports Table. Ty is one of the upper and coming guys on YouTube, has great context, and I really appreciate you, Ty. You have a really great delivery, man, and I'm really glad you're on here, man. Any final comments, Ty?
Man, I'm just ready for more football to be played. It feels weird not having a game to really be looking forward to or grinding tape for this weekend. So I don't really know what to do with myself right now.
Man, you just keep talking football, man. The news never stops.
True.
It never stops, man. There's always something to talk about. And we appreciate you, man, being here. And we appreciate all you guys inside the comment box, super chatters. If you guys want to become a fan funder of this YouTube channel, go up to the top of the screen on your computer and hit the join button. As low as $2.99 per month. Help support the channel. We really appreciate that. And then also, if you're on your phone, just go up to the top. There's a hyperlink. Hit that and you can become a fan funder. We really appreciate you guys' support. My name is Kyle Henderson of Bama Football on YouTube. He's Ty Hayes of Around the Sports Table and, a great guest of Bama Football on YouTube. We'll be coming to you frequently leading up to the Rose Bowl and past the Rose Bowl, talking all things Alabama, Crimson Tide, football, and more right here on Bama Football on YouTube. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon right here on Bama Football on YouTube.